So much. Three of you still are working on it, but I'm sure you'll knock it out by the end of today. All right. So assignment today, right? We're going to make a clone of this website. The trick here is we're only going to use the terminal to create files. Yeah, that's really the only trick. We're going to practice using the terminal, create files. That's the one restriction. And we're going to practice importing and exporting, and then we're going to practice Git as well. But I think a fairly quick assignment. Yeah. So that's the assignment. But today, what we're going to build is a calculator application. So I want to build a calculator website. Right now I have a folder that only has a .txt file.
We not see any on your...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so here's the assignment now that you can see it, right? I give you instructions right here, more like rules than really instructions, or kind of instructions too. But I trust that you guys will be able to read through those and figure that out. Basically, we're hitting terminal, Git, ES6 modules, deploying to Netlify. Did I say terminal and terminal? So I have an empty folder with notes.txt, and I need to build a website. So what file do I need to build a website? What's the most important file, right? Daniel?
Index.html.
Yeah, but per my own rules, I can't just right click and say new file. So using the terminal, and then the question is, well, what is the terminal, right? So the terminal is a way we can send instructions, written instructions to our computer. This is pretty unusual concept for us as kind of modern users of computers. This is how it originally was, right? There was only this text-based commands, but now it feels a little unusual if you're not a developer. But yeah, we can write commands to our operating system, to our operating system, to our computer. So this would be the visual way of creating a new file using a GUI, right, and VS Code. But how can we create a new file using the terminal? Daniel. Daniel?
Sorry about that. Would you have to CD into the... Well,
I'm right where I want to be. Yeah, new folder called lecture.
I can't remember the syntax. I'm not sure.
Okay. Zubida, how can I create a new file using the terminal? You're muted. Yep. Can't hear you. Yeah. We'll circle back. Victor? Oh, now we can hear you, Zubida. Are you there? Oh. Victor?
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Okay, no worries. Did anyone get it from the pre-work? How do we create a file? Yeah,
is it like
Lin J?
directory?
Is it touch?
Yeah, just the command touch. This is kind of weird, right? Naming, but that's what it is. Touch, and then the file we want to create is index.html, and then it'll appear as if we right-clicked and pressed new file, right? So that's nice. We have a brand new HTML file. I'm going to use some boilerplate. And now I want to run some JavaScript because I want to create a calculator application, and I want to write some functions like add, minus, subtract, add, minus, divide, multiply. So Mehdi, how can I create a file called index.js?
We rewrite touch in touch script point no index.js.
Yeah. Yep.
Dot.js.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a JavaScript file. Is this going to run though? What do you think, Farhan? Is this going to run yet?
No, because it's not. We didn't put a script tag in the HTML.
Yeah. So so this isn't running yet. So Farhan suggests a script tag. So we're going to do that by typing link and then typing script. We'll do our normal one. We're going to end up using module. But let's see the bug so that you guys can be reminded to use module, right? So the source is index.js. Yeah, and now we see our hi. Awesome. So now, like I said, we want to build a calculator app. Calculator. The one rule for us is a restriction. All functions have to be written in other files, modules. Okay? So like here, I want my calculator to be able to add 2 and 2. But right now that function doesn't exist. So I want to create a separate file called a module to hold that add function. But then the question is, well, why do we need modules? Why do we even need modules? What did you get from the pre-work, Farhan?
Is it to help organize our code?
Yeah, it's just for our human organization, because having I always do this with the classes. Farhan, how many lines of code do you think Google is? All of Google. How many lines of code?
Maybe 1 million.
Okay, 1 million. Any other guesses? I love
2
how
billion.
adorable these answers are. What?
2 billion.
Yeah, that's more like it. Right? So, would it be human readable if we have 2 billion lines of codes in our index.js? So we want different files for our human organization. The computer doesn't care. Okay, with that being said, I want to create a new module called add.js. How can I create a new module called add.js? Sadiq?
You go to the terminal and write touch add.js.
Very nice. And now, I'm realizing I want to spend the day writing arrow functions so we get some practice in. So, Sadiq, can you help me write an arrow function for add? It's a little
Const
mock
add
technical
is
practice. Sorry, go ahead.
Const add equal to brackets.
Brackets?
Yeah, rounded brackets.
No, not brackets.
Sorry, what do you call it?
Parentheses?
Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
parenthesis equals to greater than symbol.
Yeah, we call this a fat arrow.
Okay.
And now we
Star
have
brackets.
curly braces.
Yeah. Okay, you can take the inputs inside A and B.
Okay, so our parameters, you want to call them A and B.
Yeah, we can return A plus B.
Beautiful. Okay, so now I'm trying to run this file, this module, and it says add is not defined. But add is right here, so what's the problem?
We have not exported it and imported it.
Yeah, the problem is that each module is its own kingdom and knows nothing about anyone else. So if we want to share info, we have to explicitly import and export. Like an agreement is reached between these two different kingdoms, right? These two different lands. So I want to use add. I'm one module. Add exists in this other module. What's some steps we have to do to make that contract so I can use it? Calypso?
I know you gotta write export add, but I can't remember. You could.
Yeah, so we just use the keyword export before our function.
Yeah.
That's step one. Still, it's not working here. We still get the error. So we have one more step.
You have to put import, and then you have to put add. I think you have to put the exact name of the function.
Yes. And what I want you guys to rely on, and which I love, is to use auto import. So when you're typing the name of the function after you've exported it, there'll be an auto suggestion here to import it. And use this always, please. It'll just save so many bugs and stuff. And then it'll give you the exact syntax to import it. And now okay. Next bug. Cannot use import statements outside a module. So we have to tell the browser that we want to use this fancy new importing ES6 modules. And to do that, when you're creating your script, you just use the module option. Everything else is normal. And after all...
Defer.
Question?
Max. Do we still add defer in the script tag?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yep. And now it works. We can console.log add to. So let's do one for subtract, right? Help me out. I want to do the same thing, but subtract 4 and 2. Right now there's an error. What are some steps I need to do, Semsi?
Export and import.
Export and import what?
But first you need to create a JavaScript file called subtract.
There we go.
So
yeah, and how do I do that?
Yeah, touch.
Yep.
Touch white space subtract.js.
Very nice. What do I do from there?
Switch to that file. You could do const subtract parentheses.
Well, let's use arrow functions today.
Arrow functions. Okay.
yeah. I might not have given you guys a pre-work on arrows for like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, I do remember seeing them before, but I hardly ever use them.
Or let's write it normally and then convert it so we get the practice of seeing both.
Okay, so function subtract parentheses curly braces, and within subtract you can put parameters like num1, num2.
Beautiful, good technical communication.
And then return num1 minus num2.
Awesome. So index.js is still running, right? And it says subtract is not defined. So we have more work to do. What else? Semsi.
Importing and exporting now?
Yeah, so how do we do that? What should we start with, actually?
You can do import.
I actually encourage you guys to start with exporting because then you can rely on the auto import.
Okay.
So how do I export this one?
Use the export keyword.
Very nice. And then importing this one, it's already written, but if I press Control Spacebar, I get some IntelliSense, and I can press Tab to auto import. And then it works.
Yeah.
That's really the basics of importing and exporting. What questions are there on this, though?
Are we gonna go into like doing multiple functions from one file, or is that like later?
Yeah, we can. This actually would make more sense to say operations.js and to move this to operations and this to operations.
I was just wondering if it auto imported like differently if you did something like that versus the other way.
We'll see, right? So our application is broken, but that's to be expected. But first off, I'm not using add and subtract anymore. So how can I remove those, Calypso?
Like from the terminal?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know that one.
Yeah. Does anyone know?
RM. And then
RM, yeah. And then the name of the file. Yep. I wonder if we can do multiple. I'm not sure, but we can try, right? Yeah. Okay. And now we have these two here. So why is our imports breaking? They're trying to import from these files, but now where actually do they have to import from?
From operations.
Yeah.
But if you like let's say you put console log subtract, will it know to pull subtract from that? Or do you have to like type it out like you did up there?
Oh no, you need the import line.
Well, I mean, like, you know how it auto-completed before where it just did it for you? Will
Oh.
it still do that if there's multiple functions, is what I was wondering.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So we can still use auto import on both of these.
Got you.
Yeah. Yeah, and this syntax is nice. You can separate them with comma, the multiple things. Yeah. Obviously, we're going to constantly use this in React, so that's why we're going over it. Other questions on importing and exporting?
How do you try to export everything in like one line? So for example, operation.js, you did export for each function. Is there a way where we can just write export all these functions instead of like one by one saying export, 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 export?
Yeah, I think we could. I think we could do something like this. Well, you tell me. Do you have any ideas? I have one idea.
I think it is that, right? It's like using the same syntax. So it's export and then the curly brackets.
Yeah, so we're just exporting an object with what properties?
Function name or?
Oh. So we can just do add, comma, subtract. And did I show this to you guys yet? This is shorthand just for this. Have we haven't seen this at all yet, have we? I'm realizing.
No.
Okay, so this will probably look very bizarre. Wait, it's giving me an error anyway. Why doesn't it like that? Subtract. Key value. That should be fine, I would think. Add, subtract. Okay, it's still working this way. Huh. Why doesn't it like that? Does anyone know? I'm not sure what my bug is here, but this is a concept we haven't covered yet anyway, and I wasn't planning to cover today, so it's probably expected. I'm not sure on that. But anyway, this is how we would export multiple things. So basically here, we're exporting an object. Because we don't... no, I'm not sure there. But anyway...
Use that on import? Isn't it like import this as this? Do you use it on export also?
So here we're exporting an object where we're exporting two functions inside this object. Add and subtract is how this would read. But it would be probably more common. Well, both are going to be common. But we'll leave it the first way right now. But there is export. And let me rewrite this as an arrow function just because that's the theme of today. Okay, so I was hoping to get the question, well, what are these curly braces for, right? So let's do divide.
Named export.
Yeah, go ahead, Sadiq.
Yeah. Named export.
Yeah, so these are what's referred to as named exports. The name of your import has to exactly match the name of your export. But there's another option where that's not the case, and called a default export, or default import in this case. So let's do that. Let's say divide equals num1, num2, return num1 divided by num2. And let's say for some reason when we want to change the name of this function when we're importing it, it's not very often you do want to change the name of something, but it does happen. Like JSON web token, when you import the package, you always change the name to JWT. There's some standards that we follow like that. But anyway, what you can do instead of putting export right here, you can say export default and then the name of the whatever you want to export. Right now we're exporting functions, but you don't have to. You can export any value. And then in here, we can say, well, here, let me do console.log divide for 2 and auto import this. And this will work, right? But now the weird thing is I can change the name of this one and it'll still work. But if I try to change the name of my ad, that won't work at all because it's a named export. So we have 2 ways to export and import. Usually we're just going to use named exports and imports because we don't want to change the name from where they're defined to where we're using it. But we do have that option.
So then does that mean you can only have one default?
Correct.
Okay.
Only one default export and import. Yeah. And multiple named exports and imports.
But that's like per file, right? So you could have like 20 files and they could all have default exports and you can import them all
per
into one.
module.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct. This looks confusing. Let me do this on different lines. I think it'll look a little better. Yeah. Questions on that? I'm seeing some very concerned faces. No? Yeah. Okay. So that's the most modern syntax. You're also going to see require, which I don't think we'll cover today just because it's already a lot, just this modern version. But eventually we do have to learn require as well, which is another syntax to import and export. That's going to be used in Node, though. And right now, we haven't touched Node yet.
Do people use aliases a lot too for like the named imports, or is that not used often?
I almost never do. No, I would be in trouble if I even tried. So as my ad, is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think I've ever used this. I'm sure that's wrong, but yeah, I almost never. You'll see it in other people's codes sometimes, not often. But I guess that's with named. So I guess that's the main distinction between named exports and default exports. And if that distinction is now gone, There's really not too much difference there between the two that I can see. But I'm certainly no expert in ES6 modules. Yeah, the basics will get you pretty far. Other questions? Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Git. So what is Git? What is Git? Semsi?
So Git is a version control system.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer for a technical interview question. But what is Git if you're describing it to your buddy?
So basically, whenever I want to save my code, I use Git so that if I break my code in the future, I can just go back to a previous saved version and use that one.
Beautiful.
And also to collaborate with others.
Yes. So there's two main purposes of Git. We're not going to do the collaboration today, but that is correct. The first main purpose is to save your code. The second is collaboration. We're going to touch on the first today and not the second. Yeah. So it's a very advanced, it's like in Google Docs when you save your document, you know? But the difference is here in Git, we have to make what we call commits. And commits is a fancy word for what, Ketzerin?
It commit what you change. You change something and you commit and push up to the GitHub.
Yeah, it's the current save of our code. So like the current state. So instead of pressing file save and naming your, are you guys old enough to remember when you used to have to, like on Microsoft Office and stuff, you used to have to like save manually and like create like draft one. Maybe I'm being silly. Maybe that still exists, but I feel like in Google Docs, it's all like auto save now, right? Like I don't think that feature really exists anymore, but yeah, you would have to say like draft one, final draft two, like, yeah. So that's commits. And then the only other command we need, well, okay. Let's use Git. So how do we use Git to save this project? I wrote a bunch of code, very important code. And I want to save this project, right? So how can I use Git to do that? Ritu?
You would write the command git commit.
Yeah, so in the terminal, we can try to do git commit.
And then -m.
-m, yep.
-m, and then quotes, and then whatever you're saving, you write a message.
Yeah, and technically this is supposed to be in the imperative voice. So like you will initialize, I guess, but no one follows that. But I figured I'd show you guys the right way, quote unquote. But we're going to get an error here. It says not a Git repository. So what is step one to use Git? Yeah, ZO2?
To create a repository, well, to create an account and then to create a new repository.
Not yet, but that will be something we do in a bit.
I'm not sure. Then have to create a new account.
Yeah, and with that being said, let me talk about, so we have a local Git repo. And we have a GitHub repo. So we'll talk about the distinction there, but these two are separate things, right? Right now, we're on our local Git repo. Yeah, Elri, any guess? How can we tell this folder that we want to start saving it with Git or tracking it with Git?
I haven't saved on my local Git for a while, so I'm actually not
Sure.
Okay. It's going to be git init is the command. And that will create a hidden folder in your folder that will start tracking your changes. So that's like some homework we have to do. Now we have to do git commit, right? Or we can try that command again, but it's also going to fail because we have what we call untracked files. So we need to tell Git which files we want it to kind of save and keep track of. So how can we do that? Pimpa, any ideas? How can we tell Git to track all these files?
I don't know.
Yeah, no worries. Opens the class?
Git add
Yeah, so we're going to do git add and the dot. And what does the dot stand for, Kitsarin?
is add every file.
Yeah, everything. So git add everything, and then we try to commit again. So we're making our first save. And there we go. We went to file save as and said, draft 1, but we called it initialize. Questions on that? Our first git commit. Okay, but so what if our local computer dies, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we could store it in the cloud? And that's what we can do with GitHub. So you guys all were supposed to create GitHub accounts. And now we want to create a new repository. And we'll call this lecture. We'll call it lecture 2. We'll create a repository. So here's the thing, right? My local Git has these 4 files, right? But does the GitHub repo I just created have any files? Why or why not? David?
It doesn't. You have to push the code from your local repo to your remote repo.
Yeah. So this isn't automatically shared. You have to manually tell it you want these files to go to your GitHub repo. And we do that, like David said, with git push. Okay. So let's do that. Let's try to do that. It'll yell at us, of course. But if we do git push, it's going to say, I need to know where you want it to be pushed to. So when we created this GitHub repo, this has no idea about the existence of the local Git. So these two have no idea about the existence of each other. We have to form that connection. How do we form that connection? How do we form that connection, Daniel? Or how do we tell our local Git the address of our GitHub repo?
Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble. We would have to add a repository, so you'd probably do something git remote add. And then I think you need to put in the link to your repository, which you can copy and paste from the website, GitHub. Yep.
Okay, so the format is we use git remote add, and then we can call it anything we want, but by custom, we call this origin. It's like a nickname for the URL. And then we need to paste in the actual URL of this GitHub repo. So we can just literally copy and paste it from here or from here. It doesn't matter. Let's try to use HTTPS SSH is a little more complicated. Some of you may have to use it, particularly Mac users, but until, let's cross that bridge when it makes us. All right. So I'm now adding this connection between the two repos. And to verify, I can do get remote -v, and it shows me that Origin now knows the location of GitHub repo. So now I can try to do the push from my local to my GitHub repo to get these files over to there. So I can do git push, push to where, origin, and which branch do I want to push. The default branch might be master or main, depending on your setup. For me, it's master right now. Also, I want us to all use git bash, or if you're using some other fancy one, that's fine. But yeah, let's try to use git bash. So git push origin master. And now we go over to GitHub. And this is really cool. All our files are there. So now if we spill coffee on our laptop, we have this backup on the cloud. So it's really nice. Questions on any of that? So we really have two copies of Git, independent of each other, but communicating with each other, that we've created. And we have to keep them in sync manually. It's not automatic.
So question, so now that we attach to the GitHub repo, whenever we add and commit, do we still need to push?
Yes. Yeah, every time. Yeah, it's very manual. What else in my notes here? Terminal, Git, ES6 modules, Netlify. I guess if there's no more questions, I'll just show you guys how we're going to do a new way of deploying to Netlify. So now instead of manually dragging that folder over, we're going to use GitHub. We're going to connect Netlify to GitHub so it reads automatically from GitHub. And this is the real way we're doing it for, real applications, production applications that you ship. Okay, let's take a look at that then. So at the end of the day, you're done with your assignment and you want to deploy this. So you go to Netlify as normal. And then add a new site. And then you go to import existing projects instead of deploy manually. And then deploy with GitHub. And then you search for your repo you created. So what was it? Lecture 2. Click on it. You can leave this all untouched and say deploy. Usually it doesn't take this long, but any questions? Well, there we go. And there we go. Now anyone in the world can access this beautiful calculator application, right? That has hard-coded all the functions. Yeah, and then this is the link you would submit. So it's not too much harder than what you guys are used to. And it is going to be very nice transition to React. This is how we're going to deploy everything in the future. Questions on that? All right, let's take one more look at the assignment. Oh, this one. If you guys love auto import like I do, and like I hope you will, there's a setting you have to change in VS Code. So you have to search for this import module specifier ending and make sure it says JSTS. It'll say auto by default. So what this does is when you auto import it, instead of using the shorthand, it specifies the file completely, which is required for ES6 modules and not required for CommonJS, the competitor, which is really silly and annoying, but that's how it is. Yeah, I think we covered everything else. All right. Time for breakout rooms, unless there's another question. All right, rooms are open.